The foxwoman was sold as a petten, till I claimed her as my mate. Kale walked through the market, the neon lights of the space station reflecting off his worn jacket. The air smelled of ozone and spices, and the constant hum of hover carts and alien chatter made his ears ring. He had been to many trading hubs across the galaxy, but this one felt different. There was a tension in the air, silent understanding among the traders that not everything here was legal or safe. His eyes scanned the stalls, from the glowing fruits that seemed to pulse with energy to the alien pets caged in transparent enclosures. He had seen everything from small, glowing insects to massive, six-legged beasts. But it was in the corner of the market, almost hidden behind a screen of hanging fabrics, that something unusual caught his attention. A cage sat on a raised platform, its edges reinforced with alien steel. Inside was a creature unlike anything Kale had ever seen. She was humanoid in shape, with slender limbs and a tail that flicked nervously. Her fur was a soft shade of orange, tipped with white at the ears and tail, and her eyes were golden, sharp, and full of intelligence. Unlike the other creatures around her, she did not whine or bark or hiss. She simply stared at the crowd, her gaze calm but unyielding. "Ah, the foxwoman," a deep, gravelly voice called out. Kale turned to see the auctioneer, a broad alien with skin like polished copper, gesturing toward the cage. Rare specimen. Very obedient. Perfect for anyone looking for companionship. Bids start at 10,000 credits. Kale's brow furrowed. Obedient? He could see clearly that she was not obedient. There was a fire in her eyes, a challenge, as if she were daring anyone to claim her. Most humans might have walked on, uninterested in the dangerous politics of alien pets, but Kale felt a pull. He had always been drawn to the unusual, two things others overlooked. He stepped closer, letting the crowd of alien buyers swirl around him. He watched her, studying the way her ears twitched, how her tail moved with subtle precision. She was more than just a pet. She was alive in a way that commanded respect. She tilted her head slightly, studying him in return. The auctioneer barked for attention. "Do I hear 10,000? 20, 30. The bids climbed quickly, mostly from alien collectors. Kale stayed silent, his mind racing. He didn't want to buy her to own her. He wanted to protect her, to make sure she was not trapped in this market forever. Then an idea formed. If he could win the bid, he could take her away from this place. He raised his hand. 40,000 credits. The auctioneer's eyes widened. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some aliens scowled, others chuckled. 50,000. Someone shouted. Kale held his ground. 70,000, he said firmly, his voice calm but strong. The auctioneer's hand hovered over the bidding controls, surprised by this human's confidence. Finally, with a dramatic slam of his clawed hand on the console, the auctioneer declared, "Sold." To the human. The crowd erupted into chatter, some muttering warnings, others laughing at the audacity of a human outbidding seasoned alien traders. Kale stepped forward and unlocked the cage. The foxwoman didn't move immediately. Her eyes never left his, and for a moment it felt as if she were studying him, weighing him, deciding if he was worth trusting. Finally, she stepped out, her movements graceful and controlled. She did not bow. She did not thank him. She simply walked to the edge of the platform, her tail brushing lightly against the metal. "You're not like the others," Kale said softly, crouching slightly to seem less threatening. "I don't want to control you. I just want to help you." "Eh?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. For a moment, Kale thought she might run or attack. Instead, she tilted her head, a subtle gesture that seemed almost like consideration. Then she moved closer, keeping a safe distance. Her golden eyes locked on his. The station's security bots whirred as if sensing something unusual. Kale ignored them and offered his hand, palm open. She hesitated, then placed her hand like paw lightly in his. The contact was brief, but it was enough. "We need to get out of here," he said, rising. "This market. It's dangerous. They'll try to take you back if they know you're free." She said nothing, simply following him. Her steps were silent, and Kale noticed the way she seemed to move with a careful awareness, watching everything around them. He had rescued many beings before, but none like her. She was different, strong, intelligent, utterly independent. As they navigated the crowded market, Kale realized that the aliens were indeed watching. Traders and collectors whispered among themselves, eyes following their every move. Some shook their heads, muttering that the human was foolish. Others looked impressed by his bravery or audacity. "Why did you buy me?" the foxwoman finally asked, her voice soft but firm. It was melodic, with a hint of growl when she was serious. Kale looked at her, considering his answer. "Because no one has the right to treat you like property. And because I believe humans can offer something more than chains or cages. We understand freedom differently than others." She studied him for a long moment. Then, with a small nod, she accepted his answer without another word. Kale felt a flicker of relief. She was cautious, yes, but she wasn't rejecting him outright. Their journey out of the station wasn't easy. Several bounty hunters, alerted by the auction, tried to intercept them. Kale used quick thinking and human ingenuity to evade them, ducking into maintenance tunnels, rerouting security drones, and creating diversions with stolen holographic projectors. The foxwoman helped in her own way, using her agility to scale walls and access areas humans couldn't reach. Together, they moved like a single unit, learning to anticipate each other's actions. Finally, they reached Kale's small transport ship, a modest freighter that had seen better days. He keyed the doors and gestured for her to enter. She stepped in, her tail flicking cautiously, still alert but not hostile. Inside, the ship smelled of oil and recycled air, a stark contrast to the crowded, fragrant market. Kale began the pre-flight checks while she watched silently. He noticed her gaze lingering on the control panels, the screens, the buttons. It was clear she was curious, intelligent, and capable of learning quickly. "You don't need to speak if you don't want to," Kale said, trying to ease the tension. "But if you want, we can talk. I'd like to understand who you are, not what they say you are." Her ears twitched. For the first time, a small smile appeared on her lips. At least, what could be called a smile. "Lyria," she said simply. "That is my name, Kale," he replied, offering his hand. She glanced at it, then shook it lightly, still cautious. "Welcome aboard, Lyria." The engines hummed to life, and the freighter lifted off the station. As they cleared the outer docks, Kale looked at Lyria. "We'll be safe for now. But this is only the beginning. They will come after you, and I need to know. Can I trust you?" She tilted her head, considering him. "I do not trust easily," she said, "but I will follow you. For now. Because you are different." Kale allowed himself a small smile. That was all he needed for now. They would face the dangers ahead together, learning from each other. Surviving because humans had a way of turning impossible odds into opportunities, as the stars stretched out before them. Kale realized something he had always known, but had never fully appreciated. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy not because they were weak, but because they were unpredictable. They could think, adapt, and act in ways no other species could anticipate. And with Lyria at his side, he had a partner who could challenge him, teach him, and perhaps even change the course of his life. For the first time in a long while, Kale felt hope not just for himself, but for humanity. And for the foxwoman who had chosen to step into freedom alongside him and in the shadows of the stars, danger was already stirring. The freighter glided through the silent vacuum of space, stars stretching like silver threads across the black canvas outside the viewport. Kale leaned against the control panel, rubbing his eyes. The adrenaline from the market still pulsed in his veins, but he knew the real danger had only just begun. The foxwoman Lyria sat across from him on a metal crate, her golden eyes scanning the interior of the ship with careful precision. She had been quiet since they left the station, but Kale could feel her thoughts. Not in words, but in subtle gestures, the way she shifted her weight, the tilt of her head, the flick of her tail. "You are quiet," Kale said, finally breaking the silence. "I expected more questions." Lyria's ears twitched. "Questions are meaningless until the situation is safe enough to speak," she replied softly. Her voice carried a melodic tone, yet there was an edge of strength in it, You are different from the others. The humans I have observed are usually predictable, Kale chuckled. Predictable? That's a funny way to describe humans. We are anything but predictable, especially when we're fighting to survive. Her gaze hardened slightly. Survival requires cunning, not chaos. I wonder if your unpredictability is foolishness or intelligence. He leaned back, studying her. You'll learn soon enough. Humans can survive because we can think and adapt when others can't. And sometimes, that's the only advantage we need. Before she could respond, an alert blinked on the navigation panel. Kale's stomach tightened. They're coming. Lyria's ears flattened slightly. The Syndicate. Kale nodded. Bounty hunters. They didn't like that I took you. He swiped a few controls, pulling up a holographic map of the sector. They're faster than us, and they know this area better. We need a plan. Her tail flicked sharply. Plans are only useful if you can execute them. Elle smiled. Then we'll execute. Let's start with a diversion. He tapped a few keys, and a series of holographic decoys projected from the freighter. Small drones were dispatched to mimic the ship's signature, scattering in different directions. Lyria's eyes followed the projections, and she nodded slightly. Clever. They will not know which is real immediately. Exactly, Kale said. We need every second we can get. The freighter surged forward, weaving through an asteroid field to shake their pursuers. Kale's hands moved quickly over the controls, adjusting shields, rerouting power to the engines, and keeping an eye on the approaching ships. Lyria leaned forward, her sharp senses alert, her tail brushing against the console as if feeling the vibrations of the ship. They are closing in, she said, her voice calm but firm. You must anticipate their moves, not react to them. Kale grinned. That's the human advantage. We think ahead. He twisted the controls, sending the freighter spiraling through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. One of the pursuing ships clipped the edge, sparks flying across its hull. Lyria let out a low whistle. Impressive. Kale chuckled. Thanks. But this isn't over yet. Bounty hunters regrouped quickly, firing energy pulses that lit up the darkness of space. Kale activated the ship's shields, deflecting the blasts, while Lyria used her agility to move across the cabin with precision, adjusting the ship's secondary controls, and helping to maintain balance during sharp maneuvers. You are helpful, Kale said, glancing at her. Do not mistake assistance for loyalty, she replied, her ears twitching. I am not yet bound to you in any way. I follow because it benefits me. Kale raised an eyebrow. Fair enough. But if you're going to survive, we'll need to trust each other. At least a little. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. Perhaps. They continued their evasive maneuvers for several hours, finally finding temporary refuge in a dense asteroid cluster where sensors would struggle to detect them. Kale powered down the decoys and leaned back, finally allowing himself to breathe. You did well, he said. For someone who's supposed to be a pet? Lyria's ears twitched in irritation. Do not call me that again. I am not a pet. I know, Kale said quickly. I meant it as a compliment. I think... She gave him a pointed look, and he laughed, shaking his head. Never mind. Silence fell over the cabin, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Kale looked at Lyria and wondered about her past. Who was she, before the cages? What made her strong, intelligent, and fearless? She didn't answer, but he could feel her considering him, just as he had considered her when he first saw her at the market. Hours passed in quiet observation. Kale adjusted the ship's route, plotting a course to a remote space station that was lightly patrolled, hoping they could rest and resupply. Lyria watched him work, her eyes sharp and unblinking. You humans survive because you adapt, she said finally, breaking the silence. You take risks that others would avoid. You think differently. Dale nodded. Exactly. Adaptability is what keeps us alive, and it seems you understand that too. Her tail twitched, a sign of thoughtfulness. I understand many things, but trusting is difficult. I have been captured before, and I have seen what greed and control can do to a being like me. I know, Kale said softly. That's why I'm here. I don't want to control you. I just want to make sure you're free and safe. Lyria studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice quieter this time. I will judge you by your actions, not your words. If you fail, I will leave. But if you succeed, perhaps we can work together. Kale smiled, sensing a small victory. I think we'll manage just fine. Their journey was interrupted once more when the sensors picked up a fleet of small, fast ships approaching. The bounty hunters had not given up. Kale swore under his breath and immediately began preparing for combat. We have no choice but to fight, he said, gripping the controls. Lyria's ears flattened. Then fight we shall, but not as enemies of chance. As partners? Kale raised an eyebrow. Partners? I like the sound of that. She didn't smile, but her eyes glimmered with something like approval. Together, they prepared the ship for battle. Kale piloted with precision, weaving through asteroids and firing energy pulses to disable the enemy ships. Lyria moved across the cabin, using her unique abilities to assist him, predicting trajectories and timing his actions with uncanny accuracy. The fight was intense. The enemy ships fast and relentless. But Kale relied on human ingenuity, improvising traps and using the environment to their advantage. Lyria's senses and agility complemented his strategies perfectly. Slowly, one by one, the enemy ships were disabled, until only a single vessel remained. Kale focused all his attention on it, devising a clever maneuver that sent the ship spinning harmlessly into an asteroid. Lyria watched silently, then allowed herself a small nod of respect. You are clever, she said. Kale laughed, leaning back in his chair. I told you humans can be unpredictable, but we survive. That's our strength. For a moment, they were silent, floating in the quiet of space. The stars stretched endlessly, and Kale felt a sense of camaraderie he had rarely experienced. Lyria, once a captive, was now his companion, not just in survival, but in understanding. We need to find a safe place to rest, Kale said finally, and we need to plan our next move. They won't give up so easily. Lyria's ears twitched. I know, and I will not be captured again, but I will stay with you, for now. Because you have proven that humans are different. Kale nodded, feeling a sense of relief. That's all I ask for. We'll face whatever comes next together. As the freighter continued its journey through the asteroid field, Kale and Lyria both knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and danger lurked in every shadow. But together, they had survived the first test, combining human ingenuity and Lyria's unique abilities. And for Kale, that was proof that even in the darkest corners of space, humans had a way of turning the impossible into a chance for survival and, perhaps even victory. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, but inside the ship, a partnership was forming, one built on trust, intelligence, and the quiet understanding that together they were stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at them. And somewhere in the distance, the bounty hunters regrouped, preparing for their next attempt. But Kale and Lyria were ready. They had survived once, and they would survive again. Humans were not so easily defeated, and neither was the foxwoman at his side. Kale and Lyria drifted through the silent expanse of space, the freighter's engines humming softly beneath them. The stars outside stretched endlessly, glittering against the darkness like scattered jewels. Inside the cabin, the quiet was heavier than the void outside, filled only with the occasional beeping of the navigation console. It had been 2 days since they escaped the bounty hunters, and Kale had finally allowed himself to relax just a little. Lyria, however, remained alert. She moved gracefully across the cabin, her golden eyes scanning every control panel, every corner of the ship. Her tail swished behind her, a subtle rhythm that betrayed her thoughts. You are very careful, Kale said, leaning against the edge of the cockpit. I know you've been through a lot, but sometimes you need to let your guard down. Just a little, Lyria tilted her head. Letting my guard down is a luxury I cannot afford. Trust must be earned, not given lightly. You have done well, but I have seen humans fail, even when they appear clever. Kale smiled. That's fair. I guess we'll just have to see how this goes, won't we? She regarded him silently, then turned and walked toward the ship's small observation deck. Kale followed, curious. He had noticed that Lyria had a natural fascination with the stars. She pressed her hand against the transparent viewport, her eyes reflecting the galaxy beyond. "This universe is vast," she said softly. "It holds wonders and dangers alike. I've traveled far, but never have I felt so uncertain." Kale joined her at the window. Uncertainty can be a good thing. It keeps you alert, makes you think, and sometimes it pushes you to do things you wouldn't normally do. Humans survive because we embrace the unknown, not because we fear it. Lyria looked at him, her golden eyes steady. "I am beginning to understand that. You are not like the others. You value freedom and choice. That is rare among your kind. Rare among all beings, perhaps." Kale felt a flicker of pride. "Maybe, but it's what keeps us alive. And right now, survival is all that matters." Their moment of quiet was interrupted by the ship's sensors blinking urgently. Kale moved to the console, his hands flying over the controls. "We've picked up another fleet. Smaller, faster ships, approaching from the outer sector." Lyria's ears flattened slightly. "The Syndicate has not given up. They are relentless." Kale nodded. "They won't stop until they capture you or until I'm defeated. But we won't let that happen." He quickly analyzed the approaching ships. "They're coming in a formation that will try to box us in. We'll need to be unpredictable." Lyria crouched slightly, her body tense. "I will assist. My senses are sharper than yours, and my speed may give us an advantage. We must combine our strengths, not rely on one alone." Kale smirked. "Good. That's exactly what I was hoping for." The freighter accelerated, weaving through a dense asteroid field. Kale used every trick he knew, twisting and turning, cutting power to one engine while boosting the other, sending false signals to confuse the enemy's sensors. Lyria moved alongside him, her movements precise. It's almost like she could predict where the freighter needed to go before he even thought of it. "Left," she said sharply. "Twist the controls now." Kale followed her direction, narrowly avoiding a collision with a jagged asteroid. Sparks flew as the ship scraped against the surface, but it held. The pursuing ships, less agile and more predictable, collided with smaller debris, one after another. "You humans have strange luck," Lyria remarked, her voice calm but tinged with amusement. Kale laughed. "It's not luck. It's thinking ahead. And a little instinct?" The immediate threat passed, but Kale knew it was only temporary. "We need a real plan," he said. "Something that keeps us ahead of them for good," Lyria nodded. "There is a station not far from here, lightly patrolled and almost forgotten. We can resupply and rest there, but it is isolated. It may be safer than moving through the sector openly." Kale tapped a few controls. "Set a course. Let's see if your instincts are as good as your speed." The freighter moved silently through the stars, taking a hidden path Lyria had suggested. The station appeared gradually on the sensors, a dim cluster of lights around a small asteroid. It looked abandoned at first glance. Kale could see subtle signs of activity. Small docking bays, sensors blinking, and a faint energy signature indicating life. "Perfect," Kale said. "We'll dock, resupply, and plan our next move. We need to stay ahead of them, but we also need to understand who they are and what they want. And I think you can help with that." Lyria's ears twitched. "I may know some things. My species has observed the Syndicate for generations. They are powerful, but arrogant. They underestimate humans. That is your advantage." Kale raised an eyebrow. "We'll see if they continue underestimating us." As they docked, Kale noticed the station was not entirely abandoned. A few alien traders were present, but none seemed hostile. Kale and Lyria moved carefully, scanning their surroundings. Lyria's senses picked up small details: a locked panel, a hidden passage, a series of surveillance drones barely visible in the dim light. "Someone is watching us," she whispered. Kale nodded. "I've noticed. Let's be cautious. We don't know who is friendly and who isn't." Inside the station, they found supplies, food, energy cells, and a few weapons that Kale quickly assessed for usefulness. Lyria observed quietly, her tail flicking as she calculated the potential risks. Kale set up a small strategy board, marking positions and potential escape routes. We'll need to think ahead. They won't stop until they corner us or take you. I need to understand their tactics before they can outsmart us. Lyria leaned over the board, studying the markers. They rely on numbers, coordination, and intimidation. They rarely consider creativity or improvisation. Humans have the advantage there. Your species does not conform to predictable patterns. Kale smiled. Exactly. And we'll use that to our advantage. We'll lure them into traps, mislead them, and strike where they least expect it. Hours passed as they planned, studied the syndicate's movements, and prepared for the next phase. Kale realized that Lyria was not just a passenger or a rescued captive, she was an equal partner. Her intelligence, agility, and insights were invaluable, and together, they could challenge even the most powerful forces in the galaxy. As they rested for a brief period, Lyria spoke softly. Kale, why do you fight for me? You could have left me at the market, free to fend for myself. Most humans would not risk themselves for another being's freedom. Kale looked at her, thoughtful. Because I believe in doing what's right, and because I see something in you that deserves respect. Humans survive because we help each other, not just ourselves. That's something most others don't understand. She studied him in silence, her expression unreadable. Perhaps I misjudged your kind. I believed humans were weak, fragile, but you are clever, resourceful, and courageous. Maybe there is hope for your species yet. Kale chuckled softly. Maybe there is. And with you at my side, we can make that hope stronger. The stars outside stretched endlessly as the freighter floated near the station. Kale knew the syndicate would regroup and attack again. But he also knew that they were not ordinary prey. Together, they had survived impossible odds once and they would do it again. Humans were underestimated for a reason, and Lyria was beginning to see why. As night fell over the asteroid station, Kale and Lyria prepared for the coming battles, forging a bond built on trust, intelligence, and the unspoken understanding that survival was not just about strength, it was about creativity, courage, and the willingness to fight against impossible odds. And somewhere in the shadows, the syndicate's forces were gathering, unaware that the prey they sought was already learning to become a predator. Kale and Lyria stood at the edge of the asteroid station, the glow of the distant star casting long shadows across the metal surface. The station was quiet, deceptively quiet, and Kale could feel the tension in the air. He knew the syndicate would not give up easily. They had already sent fast attack ships after them twice, and Kale was certain they were planning something bigger, something more dangerous. Do you feel that? Lyria asked, her ears flicking nervously. Kale nodded, scanning the horizon. Yes, there's a presence here, something subtle. They're close, but they're hiding. Could be scouts, could be spies. She crouched slightly, tail brushing against the ground. We cannot rely solely on stealth. If they discover us, we must be ready to fight and outthink them at the same time. Kale smiled. That's the human advantage. We think adapt and improvise. They won't expect it, and that's how we'll win. Inside the station, they moved quickly, gathering supplies and mapping possible escape routes. Kale's freighter was docked securely, its systems running quietly, but he knew it would not be enough. The syndicate was organized, powerful, and relentless. They needed an advantage, a way to turn the tables. We'll need traps, Kale said, tapping on the console. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers and technology. But we have agility, wit, and knowledge of the terrain. We can use that. Lyria's golden eyes sparkled. I can help. I know their tactics. We can anticipate their movements, and I can manipulate their sensors to create confusion. They will think the advantage is theirs, but we will control the battlefield. Kale nodded. Good. Let's split tasks. You handle sensor manipulation and observation. I'll rig the station with countermeasures and diversions. If they attack, we'll lead them where we want. They worked efficiently, each relying on the other's strengths. Lyria moved like a shadow, her agility unmatched, setting small devices that interfered with scanning systems. Kale rigged the station with carefully placed energy barriers, holographic illusions, and escape paths. Hours passed, but neither spoke much. Words were unnecessary. Their actions communicated enough. When the preparations were complete, they paused to catch their breath. Lyria approached Kale, her ears flicking. "You are clever. I did not expect a human to think this far ahead. Most would panic or flee. You plan, and you adapt. That is admirable." Kale smiled.
Thanks.
"But planning is useless without action. We need to be ready for them tonight. They will not wait forever." As night fell over the asteroid station, the first scouts of the Syndicate arrived. Small, fast ships darted through the void, scanning for any sign of Kale and Lyria. But the freighter's holographic decoys and Lyria's sensor manipulations confused them. One by one, the scouts reported back, unable to pinpoint the station's location. "They are cautious," Lyria whispered. "They sense something, but they do not know what. This is our advantage. We can strike first, or wait until they make a mistake."
Oh.
Nodded. "We'll wait. Patience is a human skill. The Syndicate will underestimate our patience, and that will be their downfall." The hours passed slowly, the tension building. Kale and Lyria stayed near the freighter, watching and listening. They could hear the faint hum of engines outside, the distant chatter of alien communications. Every sound was a warning, every movement a signal. Finally, the attack came. A squadron of Syndicate ships broke from the shadows, firing pulses of energy toward the station. Kale activated the countermeasures he had set up, creating energy barriers and holographic illusions that sent the attackers scattering. Lyria moved swiftly, manipulating their sensors, making them believe the station was larger than it was, full of traps and hidden defenses. The fight was intense, but calculated. Kale used his knowledge of the station's layout, leading the attackers into narrow passages where their numbers became a disadvantage. Lyria used her agility and speed to strike at critical points, disabling key systems and creating chaos among their ranks, one by one. The Syndicate ships were forced to retreat or were disabled entirely. The remaining attackers regrouped, frustrated and confused. Kale realized they were underestimating him and underestimating humans in general. "They think they can overwhelm us with technology and force," Kale said, glancing at Lyria, "but they don't understand the human mind. That is our true weapon." Lyria's ears twitched. "I begin to see that. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but intelligent in ways that others do not anticipate. You do not rely on strength alone. You rely on thinking, adaptation, and cooperation." Kale nodded. "Exactly. And together, we are stronger than any of them expect." The battle continued for several hours, with Kale and Lyria using every trick they could imagine. Energy pulses, false signals, and quick maneuvers kept the Syndicate forces off balance. Lyria's sharp instincts allowed them to anticipate the attackers' moves, while Kale's strategy ensured that every action had a purpose. Finally, the last of the Syndicate ships retreated, their pride wounded and their plans thwarted. Kale and Lyria stood among the wreckage, catching their breath. The station was damaged, but it had held. Their partnership had turned the tide, proving that ingenuity and trust were more powerful than brute force. Lyria approached Kale, her golden eyes bright. "You have proven your words true. Humans can survive impossible odds through intelligence and cooperation. I am beginning to respect your kind and perhaps trust you more than I intended." Kale smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "That's all I ask. Trust takes time, but we'll build it, one step at a time." They spent the next few hours repairing the station and preparing for the next move. Kale analyzed the Syndicate's tactics, noting weaknesses they could exploit in future encounters. Lyria shared her knowledge of their strategies and technology, adding insights that only her species could provide. Together, they created a plan that combined human ingenuity with her unique abilities. As dawn approached, Kale looked at Lyria. "We've survived tonight, but this is only the beginning. The Syndicate will return, stronger and more determined. We need to be ready." Lyria nodded. "I know. But now, I will fight alongside you, not because I must, but because I choose to. That is a bond stronger than chains or orders. We are partners, Kale. Kale felt a surge of pride. Partners. I like that word. And together, we'll face whatever comes next. Humans have a way of turning impossible odds into victory. And I have a feeling you're going to be an important part of that.
Outside.
The stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the bond forming between human and foxwoman. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but Kale and Lyria had learned to survive together, to think together, and to trust each other in ways that few could understand. The next threat would come, Kale knew. The syndicate would regroup, stronger and more cunning than before. But he was ready. With Lyria at his side, his mind sharp and his heart determined, he knew they could face any challenge. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, but that was their advantage. And somewhere among the stars, Lyria's thoughts mirrored his own. She had seen many beings, many species, and yet humans had something unique, something powerful and unexpected. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of forming bonds that could outmatch even the most advanced technology or the most ruthless enemies. For the first time in a long while, Lyria felt a sense of hope, not just for herself but for the human she had once doubted. They were unpredictable, yes, but they were also capable of greatness, courage, and loyalty. Kale looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of the galaxy pressing against them. But for the first time, he did not feel alone. He had Lyria, the foxwoman, at his side. Together, they would face the challenges ahead. And together, they would prove that even in a galaxy dominated by powerful species and advanced technology, humans had a way of surviving and thriving against all odds. As the freighter's engines hummed softly, Kale and Lyria prepared for the next stage of their journey. The syndicate would not rest, and neither could they. But they had each other, and in a universe that often underestimated humans, that was the greatest advantage of all. The galaxy was vast, filled with danger, mystery, and opportunity. And Kale and Lyria were ready to face it together. Kale's freighter hovered above the asteroid station, the engines humming softly, but his mind was sharp, every sense alert. The syndicate had returned, this time with a fleet larger than he had ever seen. They were relentless, determined to capture Lyria and punish the human who dared to defy them. But Kale and Lyria were ready. They had planned, adapted, and turned the station into a trap. Now it was time to see if humans' unpredictable nature to outmatch the syndicate's overwhelming force. Lyria stood beside him in the cockpit, her golden eyes fixed on the approaching ships. "They are confident," she said. "They believe they have the advantage. That is their first mistake." Kale nodded. "They underestimate humans. That has always been our advantage. And now they'll learn it the hard way." Outside, the fleet spread across the void, weapons glowing and scanning for any sign of the station. Kale activated the decoy holograms, sending multiple images of the freighter in different directions. He routed power to the shields, the engines, and the energy pulses, preparing for the first strike. Lyria moved through the cabin with precision, adjusting the sensors, manipulating the enemy fleet's tracking systems, predicting their movements. "They will split their forces," Lyria said. "Some will attempt a direct assault. Others will try to flank. If we act correctly, we can trap them against the asteroids." Kale smiled. "Then let's do it." The first wave of attackers darted forward, expecting an easy victory. Kale's freighter twisted and dodged with human unpredictability, weaving through the asteroid field, while Lyria's sensor manipulations caused confusion among their targeting systems. One by one, enemy ships collided with rocks, disabled each other, or fired at illusions instead of the real freighter. "Impressive," Lyria said, her tail flicking with approval. "They did not expect this," Kale grinned. "No one ever expects a human to fight this creatively." The second wave arrived, larger and more aggressive. Kale anticipated their moves, guiding the freighter through narrow gaps, drawing the enemy into positions where their numbers became a disadvantage. Lyria struck at weak points, using her speed and agility to disable engines and weapon systems on several ships. The chaos multiplied as the attackers struggled to coordinate their attacks, confused by holograms, energy barriers, and rapid maneuvers. They are adapting, Lyria warned. We cannot rely solely on trickery. We must act decisively. Kale nodded. Then we end this now. We'll strike where they least expect it, initiated a bold plan. Using the asteroid field, the freighter darted between massive rocks, then suddenly cut power to the engines, allowing the fleet to overshoot their position. Lyria triggered the last of the sensor manipulations, making the attackers believe the station had vanished entirely. Confused and disoriented, the enemy fleet became vulnerable. Kale seized the opportunity. He powered the freighter's energy pulses, sending a concentrated blast toward the nearest ships, disabling several instantly. Lyria leaped into action, coordinating attacks from her position, striking with precision. The combined force of human ingenuity and her unique abilities created a storm the Syndicate had not anticipated. One of the Syndicate commanders realized their error and attempted to regroup. Kale and Lyria anticipated the move. Using the asteroid as cover, they executed a flanking maneuver, trapping the remaining ships. Within moments, the Syndicate fleet was either destroyed, disabled, or forced to retreat. The void fell silent once more, the threat neutralized, at least for now. Kale exhaled, leaning back in his chair. We did it, Lyria approached, her ears twitching with a mixture of excitement and relief. Yes, you have proven your words true. Humans are clever, adaptable, and courageous. I am impressed. Kale smiled. Thanks. But we couldn't have done it without each other. That's the real advantage partnership. We complement each other. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. I see that now. I have been wrong to doubt humans. They are not weak, and they are not predictable. They survive because they think, because they adapt, and because they fight for what they believe in. Kale leaned back, glancing at the stars outside. That's us. And now we can take the next step. This galaxy is full of dangers, but also opportunities. And together, there's almost nothing we cannot face. Lyria's tail swished thoughtfully. Almost nothing. But we must remain vigilant. The Syndicate is powerful and will likely regroup. They will not forget this defeat. Kale nodded. Then we prepare. But we also move forward. We learn, adapt, and grow stronger. That's what humans do. The freighter's engines hummed steadily as they left the asteroid station behind. Kale plotted a course toward a safer region of space, a place where they could resupply and recover. Lyria observed the controls, her mind sharp and alert. Yet a hint of trust had settled between them, a bond forged in survival, ingenuity, and mutual respect. As they traveled, Kale and Lyria talked about their pasts, their cultures, and their philosophies. He learned about her species' abilities, their traditions, and the subtle strengths that made them formidable. She learned about humans, their adaptability, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. Slowly, a deeper connection formed, not just as allies, but as equals, capable of understanding and supporting one another in ways few others could. I underestimated humans once, Lyria said quietly, her gaze distant. I thought your species was fragile, easily broken. But I see now, you are resilient. You endure, you adapt, and you fight for what matters. That is rare in the galaxy. Kale smiled. It's what makes us strong. And with the right partners, we can do incredible things. Ain't. Lyria tilted her head, her golden eyes meeting his. Then I will stay by your side, not because I must, but because I choose to. Together, we are stronger than either of us alone. Kale felt a warmth in his chest. I'm glad. Partners, then. Not master and captive, but equals, working together. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, but inside the freighter, a new understanding had taken root. Kale and Lyria were more than survivor and rescued. They were a team bound by trust, respect, and the shared determination to face the galaxy's challenges. Days passed as they traveled through less traveled sectors, learning, practicing maneuvers, and preparing for any future threats. Lyria's abilities complemented Kale's strategy perfectly. She could sense dangers before they appeared, manipulate systems with precision, and move with agility that surpassed any human. Kale brought ingenuity, experience, and creativity, turning seemingly hopeless situations into opportunities. Together, they became a force neither the Syndicate nor any other enemy could easily predict or overcome. One evening, as they floated near a small, uninhabited planet, Kale watched Lyria observe the horizon. "You're thinking?" he said quietly. "I am considering possibilities," she replied. "The galaxy is vast, and we have survived only because we adapted. But survival is not enough. We must thrive, and that requires foresight, cooperation, and courage." Kale nodded. "That's humans in a nutshell. And now, you're part of it. Together, we'll face whatever comes next." She regarded him for a long moment, then finally allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Then we will face it together." As the freighter lifted off the planet's surface, Kale felt a sense of hope. The galaxy was dangerous, but humans had a way of turning danger into opportunity. They had survived impossible odds, outsmarted a powerful syndicate, and discovered the value of trust, partnership, and ingenuity. Lyria moved beside him, her presence both comforting and powerful. She was no longer the foxwoman trapped as a pet. She was an equal, a partner, and a vital part of their shared journey. Her respect for humans and for Kale was evident, and in turn, Kale had gained more than a companion. He had gained someone who could challenge him, support him, fight alongside him through any adversity. The freighter soared into the endless stars, carrying Kale and Lyria toward an uncertain future. But one thing was certain. They had proven that humans, underestimated as they were, had the intelligence, courage, and adaptability to survive and thrive against any odds. And in the quiet of space, Kale knew this was only the beginning. The Syndicate would return, the galaxy would present new dangers, and the challenges would grow. But together, human ingenuity and the foxwoman's unique abilities were unstoppable. Kale glanced at Lyria, her golden eyes reflecting the distant stars. "We've come far," he said, "but we're just getting started." She tilted her head, a spark of determination in her gaze. "Then let us continue. For ourselves, for each other, and for the strength that humans possess. Unpredictable, resilient, and unstoppable." Kale smiled. "Exactly. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do." With that, the freighter soared forward, leaving the asteroid station behind, heading into the unknown. Together, they would face the galaxy's challenges, overcome impossible odds, and prove that even in a universe dominated by advanced species and powerful technology, humans had something unique: the ability to think, adapt, and persevere when no one expected it. The foxwoman, once sold as a pet, had become his mate, his equal, and his greatest ally, and together they would write their own story across the stars. A story of courage, ingenuity, and the unstoppable power of partnership.